Hey, everybody, welcome back to another hosting.com live stream. We've had our guest, well, not even guest, our expert in today before. If you've been to our previous live streams, seen her stuff on YouTube for hosting.com, we have Daphne Monro, head of website and content at hosting.com. And here's a little secret, everybody. She's my boss, but she'll go down as the best boss I've ever had, because also what you're going to hear today is she knows her stuff inside and out. She cares about people. You're going to hear both of that, technical skills and people, all throughout this. But she was responsible for our huge migration from a2hosting.com to hosting.com, which was no light task. She shared that in previous webinars that I'll share here again, but she's going to be sharing today. I'll let her talk more about that. But if you have questions as we go, hit the Q&A button at the bottom. If we have time, I'm not sure we will. She's got a lot to share today for you. So get ready with a pad and paper or however you take notes, because you're in for another great webinar. Daphne, thank you for being on today. Can't wait to hear what you're going to say.
Thank you so much, Corey. And hi, everybody. I'm really excited to dive into some strategy with you. So if you did join in the last webinar, one of the things that I touched on was that I didn't really dive into tools. So today is going to be kind of back to basics. Like, where are we going to begin our auditing? What tools do we need? What methods are we going to use? And how do we make sure we reap the most benefits from this initial analysis, which can ultimately allow you to define what your project timeline looks like with different clients, or maybe what your project timeline looks like for yourself. So let's get started. I'm going to make sure that my screen works. So what is an SEO audit? The audit is this initial phase. So this is going to be before you begin any work, and it's going to help you prioritize what you need to do from an SEO perspective. So we can see things that are hurting our rankings. So this is things that could be blocking crawlers from getting the most from our content. It could be finding new opportunities. So analyzing what competitors are doing, or maybe untapped areas of content that you can dive into to start to grow new audiences and engage new users on your website. And then create that roadmap. So understanding where we're going to prioritize and why. So it's not about just finding what's broken, but it's about discovering quick wins and long-term opportunities and allowing you to turn this report into a business strategy. So we're going to start with our tools. We use a lot of tools in the SEO space, and they don't all cost money, which I think is great. A tool I hope we're all using if we have websites, and if we're not, please get this set up today, is Google Search Console. So Google Search Console is free to use. It's got everything you need kind of in a nutshell. It allows you to look at what keywords are driving in existing users, what positions that you're ranking in, what impressions you have. So how many people are seeing your listing when they search specific queries on the SERP. SERP is search engine results page. I will probably be using that word a lot. Just means like the Google listing page that people land on when they're searching different queries. Here, you also can see some crawling errors. You can submit your sitemap. So you should have an XML sitemap for each of your site that tells crawlers which pages you want them to visit and which pages you don't by not including them. You can also get a sneak peek at Core Web Vitals, any issues going on there, and lots of different things to dive into. I'm not going to dive too much detail in each one, but just give a general overview of why I use it and how we use it, and then we can start talking about actions a bit later. If you're in the webinar right now and you have the Google Doc site audit sheet next to you, each of the little tasks I have there has an example of like a rating. Take that with a hefty pinch of salt, because that's just a fake rating. But it also has the tools linked in there as well, so you can see what tools I use for which specific sections of that audit. So hopefully that will help you put this into action, and we'll talk more about action at the end. Anyways, let's get back to what we're here to talk about, and that's tools. Another one that I recommend is Ahrefs or SEMrush, or there's hundreds of them. These are just specific ones that I use. These are traditionally paid tools that are kind of a catch-all for keyword research and competitor analysis. They all function in a fairly similar way, which will allow you to search by keyword. So you can do keyword research, or by URLs. So you can do URLs of yourself and see how you're performing, or of competitors to see how they're performing, and then leverage those insights to help you shape your strategy. So this includes lots of different metrics like your domain rating, your backlink portfolio, estimated organic traffic, emphasis on the estimated, because the only place that we're going to find your real organic traffic is from a platform that is tied to your website. So Google Search Console and Google Analytics will have real user data. There's obviously a wealth of other platforms you could use, but those are the two that I would use from an SEO perspective. And then things like Ahrefs and SEMrush will use very good formulas to estimate what that looks like based on keyword volume and position, and that you can use to benchmark yourself against competitors. Onto a bit more SEO tools that I highly recommend. I'm going to kind of go quickly through these next three. So we've got Google Page Speed Insights, GT Metrics, and then I didn't add in here, which is the Lighthouse Report. But they all kind of pull the same data, which is going to be the speed and performance of your website. So you can break that down based on mobile and desktop, or you can even toggle different performance metrics. Like when you're running your Lighthouse report, you can choose how fast you want that connection to be to see how different users experience your site. I didn't put the Lighthouse report in here, and I really should have, because that's probably my number one go-to quick page speed insight platform. And that one you can go just in your browser in incognito mode. That way that you're not pulling any data from any browser extensions or anything that you may be using. You also need to be in Google Chrome. Right click, inspect, and then choose Lighthouse from the arrows on the top menu bar, and you can run your reports there. They will typically report on your core web vitals, which will dive into what they mean and how to benchmark your site or your client site against that a little bit later. So if you've been to any of my chats or chatted with me, I talk about Ahrefs a lot. It's been my, the love of my SEO life and a platform I've used throughout my whole career. So highly rate it. And I love the webmaster tools that we have, which comes from crawling your entire site. So you'll put in your site, and Ahrefs will send its crawlers through and then go through everything and identify different errors, warnings, and notices. This allows you to then see which technical changes you need to make immediately, because it is blocking crawlers from reading your site in the best way. So errors can be things like 404s, and then you'll have warning and notices, which are going to be those less impactful SEO metrics, like maybe you have multiple H1s on your site, you're missing alt tags, things of that nature. And then it through the errors, warnings, and notices, you can prioritize pretty easily off of that. Um, and then there's also Screaming Frog, which does something very similar. Screaming Frog has a great free tool that I highly recommend everybody has. Unlike Ahrefs, Screaming Frog allows you to crawl your site in lots of different ways. So you can spider, which is meaning that they send their crawler through and it acts like a little spider and crawls through every single link of your site. And that's how it explores all of the pages that exist. But you can also submit lists or write unique rules. So you can have just crawls of specific folders. You can look for specific words on your site. You can really tailor this to whatever you need to get from that crawl. So I really love Screaming Frog. It also gives a great technical deep dive, so you can find broken links, redirect chains, and orphan pages through this platform. You'll have that in Ahrefs as well. And pretty much, I mean, if you use Deep Crawler Lumar, there's hundreds and hundreds, and we are not sponsored by any of them here at hosting.com. This is just my honest experience and preference throughout my years of being in SEO. So I look at SEO as four main pillars, and we're going to be diving into these pillars throughout our audit of our website. So foundationally, a website needs to have good tech. So it needs to run well, it needs to have clean code, not lots of bloat, and a good structure. We also need to have good on-page SEO. So each page needs to have a purpose, a reason to exist. So that's could be attributed to a primary keyword, or it could not be a primary keyword if you're doing something that's more brand driven. Just a reason to be its own page. Otherwise, we'd merge it into other pages. I digress. We also have other things that fall into on-page SEO, like internal links, or FAQs, things that we do on our site to help it rank. There's also offsite activities such as backlink building, digital PR campaigns, anything that gets other people talking about you. And then the user experience of your site. So, how do users engage? How long do things take to load? Can people put things in their cart and check out quickly or fill out that contact form without getting an error message to make sure it reaches your inbox? All of these things are foundational to SEO. And you'll notice that SEO covers a lot of ground. So, we need to be thinking of all these different things when we're doing our auditing process. So the 5 phases, if we break it down, we have the discovery. So we're looking at our performance based benchmarked against competitors, but also we can benchmark against ourselves. Some people don't like to call it an audit if you're doing it again and again. And like I've worked at places where we've just done an initial audit and then you're just doing reports afterwards. I think that's silly, and they're all audits at the end of the day. So I would run multiple audits myself. Um, so the discovery, we see where we're performing and we can perform against ourselves or others. Then the technical performance of the site specifically. So how quickly things are loading and how we benchmark against Google's Core Web Vitals. We have the content and optimization. So those different on-page elements like H1s, other title tags, internal links, um, things of that nature. Off page will be a backlink portfolio, and then advanced opportunities, which are things like featured snippets, schema data, AI overviews, and more. And then a little meme because you got to put in a little silliness in here. But when you start out, it can be really exciting. When you've done it 945 times and you're running into the same errors and you're learning these flows of these sites, you can feel like a weathered sailor at times. And you'll notice too, if you're doing this for a lot of people, you'll probably likely run into a lot of the same errors, which is great because you'll become an expert really quickly and know how to fix them and bring all the solutions to your clients. So, what does the discovery phase look like? I love starting with Google Search Console data. So, how have our clicks and impressions been going over time? Looking at clicks and impressions in Google's Search Console also can help you have a little bit of insight of PPC activity. So, if you know that there's been some paid campaigns going on specific keywords, I'd highly recommend implementing that knowledge into this part of the discovery phase. So if you know, for example, for hosting.com, if we've been doing some brand driven PPC activity, I'd want to see how our impressions and clicks from an organic perspective have been impacted for those specific keywords. So I'm using Google Search Console's query search toggle feature. You can put in different things and pull them out through there. You can also see just with a bird's eye view if there's been any different drops or changes or increases, and then dive into what day that happened and what kind of activity was going on in the website. As a rule of thumb, I'd look at the last 16 months of data. You could compare that to itself or just as a whole and identify any drops or severity and then analyze those down to the query level. So when you're in Google Search Console as well, if you scroll down below the main graph, you can see um, what queries are attributed to the clicks and impressions. Obviously, we also want to focus on our high traffic pages. So SEO meets users at every step of the journey. So whether they're just reading a blog for the first time or if they've been through their discovery phase and they're ready to purchase with us, all of these things should be tracked and give us data to work with. And we can dive into the way users engage with different pages. Personally, as an e-commerce business, you probably want to be putting the most emphasis on the transactional pages of your site. So I'd put that as a high focus area. But then also check out different subfolders as well. You can also break it down by like if you have a structured site with good site architecture, maybe you've got like a women's section, men's section, blog section. We can pull all that data from here. Um, this is just some examples of what could look like issues when we're looking at our site crawling insights, which also lives in Google Search Console. Looking at your crawl rate is very important because it shows you how often Google is going to your site and how important it's finding that content. So if crawls are dropping significantly, you maybe want to go and check your robots.txt file, your error log on any of the platforms that you're running your audits on, and just look at what's going on there so that we can see. I mean, hopefully, if you do see a significant drop, you've done a content consolidation plan or something that would attribute to this. But it's definitely always worth peeking in this spot to make sure you're performing as you'd like to be. When we're looking at competitors to benchmark ourselves against, there's a lot of different reasons we may choose people to be our competitors. So, like in I don't know, the hosting space. I'm going to keep coming back to the hosting space because it is my home. We'll probably want to choose people who are selling the same products as us or hitting the same target audience. But there's other things that we can do, like look at what competitors have keyword overlaps with us. There's a really good report on Ahrefs that shows you your organic competitors. And sometimes clients are really, really surprised by who shows up in that space. And you can actually see the percentage of keyword overlap that you have with them. So you may identify new people who are like you, which would allow you to find new areas to grow into, especially when it comes to upper funnel content. But we don't always just care about what they're selling or what they're saying, but we also want to know if we're in the same league, if you will. So looking at people with a similar domain ranking or domain authority can be a good place to start because you can see where they're building their backlinks, who's talking about them, and use that to help build your own strategy against. When we're looking at traffic drops, there's obviously a plethora of reasons things can change, especially in the SEO world where everything's changing all the time. One thing we always want to look for initially is when the last core update was done. I do strongly, strongly feel that core updates should not be blamed for a lot of issues because if we're doing a great, solid SEO strategy, we should always be creating the best content possible. And this really should never be an algorithm hack. It will just like reap the rewards for being great itself. And as we've seen over the past 5 years, especially Google's shift towards that EEAT and helpful content updates, this is more and more true. And if you joined the last webinar about SEO for LLMs, you'll hear me chat a lot about that. And if you haven't heard it, check us out on YouTube because there's a lot of great knowledge in there that you can walk away in action today too as part of these audits or just part of your SEO strategies for anything. So always check Google Search Console, compare updates with compare any changes with Google's update history, and then dive into any significant drops that would have happened during this time. So if you're seeing a big drop in organic keywords and you're using Google Search Console for free or Ahrefs, you can dive into that day and look at what drops happen and why. So sometimes that's attributed. Maybe you have a legacy page with some products you don't offer anymore. So you maybe want to change the intent of that page to no longer be transactional, but informational. There's lots of different ways we can leverage our SEO performance to be impactful, even if strategies need to shift to make sure you don't lose any of that authority you've built over time. So that's phase number one. So that's our discovery phase. Next one is all about technicality of our website. So when we run our initial crawl, it's always good to take a peek at what is showing up on that crawl log. So some of the most common errors I've come across are people with sites that are basically cannibalizing or competing with themselves because they've got a www version and a non-www version, and those pages both exist on site and are being crawled, but ultimately they're two separate pages, even just because they have that one little change. So they're competing against each other in the SERPs. So if you have anything like that, make sure that your correct redirects are in place so that the right pages have the right to rank. HTTPS is vital. So everybody should have an SSL certificate in 2025. If you sign up for hosting with hosting.com, you'll get a free one when you sign up. So get in there. Check for redirect chains. So this is when pages are being redirected too many times. So maybe we have our non-www sent to our www, and then we added a new folder, and then we changed the spelling another time. So now we've got 4 redirects. Each time we have a redirect added, we're losing a little bit of value. So what we want to do instead is go to that initial redirect and update it so it's just like for like instead of having to hop all the different ways down that chain. And then 302 redirect should only be used in cases of temporary changes. For example, we used it for hosting.com to A2 hosting before we were live and announced with hosting.com to slowly show that authority. But when you're ready to make that shift, you should 301, or if the time of need for that temporary redirect is over, make sure that you go back. I'll keep it going because I'm talking a lot and we got a lot of slides still to get through. Looking at crawl and indexation issues, there are a lot of things that can show up, but some critical things to discuss are pages blocked by robots.txt. So I did see a comment come in about, can you explain more about the robots.txt file? Yes, I can. All pages should have some rules given on this file on site. And basically, it just says allow and disallow, and you decide or you guide, I guess, if you'd like crawlers to be able to read your site. One instance that I recently saw was Reddit has turned off, they're disallowing crawlers via their robots.txt rules, which I thought was very interesting because they're dominating the SERP these days. But you can use them for lots of different reasons. So for us at hosting.com, we want our stuff to be read by crawlers because we want to show up in all searches for LLMs, in Bing, Google, wherever you are. We want to make sure that you can find us. But there may be reasons you don't want users to find certain subsections of your site, which you can write rules to disallow. For example, if you have members areas or paid content behind the scenes, these are the types of things that we're going to block or disallow. Other issues that are often found, no index tags on important pages, especially if your staging site is also your live site. Make sure we turn those off. Canonicals pointing to the wrong URLs. Sometimes they slip through. Make sure we update those. And then orphan pages are probably the number one issue we run across, which are just little pages floating in the ecosphere that aren't connected anywhere and can't be found and probably aren't very important and need to be retired properly. Different sitemap issues that can be found during crawls are non-200 status codes. So that's like our 404s or 500 errors. Missing priority pages. Hopefully you're not missing any priority pages in your XML sitemap, but if you are, make sure to add them. If we're adding any redirect URLs or if we're getting too big, those are things that we need to audit as well. Site architecture is something that we can audit too. So this is, again, looking at that crawl log and all the URLs that were identified during it. Things that we want to remove, or not remove, but canonicalize probably, are if we have dynamic parameters and they're not applicable to keywords that we want to show up in search and they're creating multiple pages. We want to make sure that we're sending authority to one correct page to rank. Uppercase letters, of course, multiple URLs for the same content, things of that nature. And then we have the depth problem. So if important pages are too far away and aren't being found either in your navigation or footer or in tables of contents, they could take a while for crawlers to find and users to find, and therefore are less likely to rank. So we want to make sure that we're linking a lot to our priority pages. Flat architecture is a big no-no because we need to show crawlers what our relationship is between the parent and the child pages on our site. For example, we'll have a hosting folder and then a WordPress hosting folder. That way Google knows that the hosting keywords go to hosting, but that the WordPress keywords go to our WordPress pages. And then we could go on more and more with the different plugins or page builders and things that would attribute to their own keywords, but help us gain that authority for that parent keyword at the same time. I talk a lot about cannibalism and cannibalization. This is what that is. So if we're creating too many pages that are targeting the same keyword and they don't have their relationships structured, they're actually going to compete with themselves and make it harder to rank. But with that structure in place, you're showing their relationship and letting them show up in their own space. And that is the goal. We want everything to have a right to rank and to rank properly. Orphan pages and broken internal links also need to be identified. Page resources and server errors. Ooh, spooky. We do not want to be wasting resource, especially as core web vitals are so important to our right to rank, and performance directly impacts our right to make money. If we are too slow, people are going to bounce and leave or research other competitors. So we need to make sure that we are getting rid of any errors or extra code bloat that's just getting in the way from people being able to do what they want to do. In this picture here, actually on the left-hand side, this is an example of a robots.txt file, which is quite funny and probably should have been on the previous slide, but it's from Nike, or Nike if you're English. And you can see the allow and disallow rules in action. If you're not sure where to start, ask an LLM. They'll help you write your rules. Different things to look out for are large HTML sizes. Big images are probably the number one killer. Definitely recommend getting your images in a WebP format if possible on your CMS. And just making sure things are as fast as possible to get people to where they need to be. Now we get to dive into some core web vitals. You might be, hey, Daph, this is an outdated image. I know, but we'll talk about the new one as well. I know FID is no longer important, but I still wanted to talk about it because it's fundamental, right? So we always want to test our site speed on a mobile first approach. Even if your clients are using desktop as their number one driver to your site, Google is prioritizing mobile first. So we need to make sure that we have that experience in place. So you can use your phone, obviously, or when you're testing on Lighthouse, toggle it into mobile mode to make sure it's performing as you'd like it to. And you can also benchmark against your competitors in desktop and mobile. Sometimes that's really eye-opening, and I recommend doing both. I'm going to take a sip and then hop onto the next slide real quick, where we discuss these in more detail. So largest contentful paint is how long it takes the biggest element to load on screen. Often this is going to be your big hero image. Sometimes when they're really, really slow, they're often really big videos that people like to have in their header. And I love having nice videos too, but we need to make sure that we're compressing them properly if we want them to be up front and center, because this is going to be used very heavily in our weighting and right to rank. So we want to try to keep this LCP score under 2.5 seconds. You can run these reports with any of those tools that I shared in the beginning that talk about performance, so GTmetrix, Lighthouse, et cetera, et cetera. Fixes, as previously mentioned, WebP format for images is the best. We use that on the hosting.com site, and it significantly saves us a lot of space. We can resize if we, our PNGs and JPEGs as well when needed. Lazy loading images below the fold is something that I highly recommend for everybody to do. This significantly impacts page speed performance. Using great hosting, like our rocket.net powered hosting options for managed WordPress at hosting.com, or a CDN yourself if you want to set up on Cloudflare, are great options just to make sure that you're cached properly and as quick as can be for anybody who's hitting your site. Or preloading images or deferring non-critical JavaScript. There's a lot of options there. And when you're running these reports, a lot of times you'll get those action options off the back of your audits, even the free ones like Lighthouse, so you can investigate yourself and find out which solution is right for you. FID, which is now INP, so first input delay, used to mean how long it took from the first click to the next action. Now, INP, which is interaction to next paint, measures all the clicks on your site. And if you're using your browser tools in Google Chrome and you open up just like you would on Lighthouse, you'll see that you have a performance tab. You can actually measure INP on your site and on your competitor sites as well. And as you click around, you'll get to see what that score is, and you can take those numbers and add them into your audit spreadsheet that I shared. So different fixes. I mean, this one is really hard to say. These are just some like overall rules, but it really depends on your stack and your CMS and what you've built. Each one is going to be a bit different. But if, let's say, for example, we're using different page builders on WordPress, like Elementor, you'd probably have, well, you definitely have less capability to make any changes around these. So because all that code is like pre-built as part of these plugins, you can identify these errors, but you maybe won't always be able to solve them. Other platforms, I don't know if I should name lots of platforms, but there's lots of like prefab, pre-built page editors that you don't have that developer control over. So it might make these things tougher. The only reason I'm flagging that is when you're running these audits and you're finding solutions for your client, it's important to help them understand what is and isn't capable possible in these different scenarios. And in my experience, page builders don't often give you a lot of control over these different things. So just be ready to dive into that and understand what tools you can use and what changes you can have. And then this is just diving to INP, but we kind of discussed that already. So I'm going to skip on. Cumulative layout shift, CLS. This one is probably my number one annoyance on websites. When I go in to read an article on a website and I'm just getting started and then everything shifts around, it can be frustrating. A lot of times it's because of ads that they have on their website, but it could be lots of different reasons, like images not having explicit widths and heights set so that the page knows what space to give you when a user is perusing. So make sure we always have widths and heights on our images and videos. Make sure that our spaces for ads also have minimum heights. Preload web fonts, load dynamic content below the fold, and then reserve. Well, now I'm just reading, but fix jumpy cookie notices with reserved spaces. So anything that might pop up or flash or ruin a user experience, we just want to make sure that we've given the browser and the user all the knowledge that they need so that the experience is as seamless as possible. We're about to head into phase 3. How's everybody doing? Are we, are we feeling all right? It's a lot of information, but I will keep on cracking on. So phase 3 is all about content and on-page experience. And this is arguably the most important section for SEO right now in 2025. And that is heavily influenced by LLMs and how users are changing the way that they search with us. So content is king. And we still, while we're creating lots and lots of new great ways to digest content, whether that's short form videos or webinars, we need to make sure that we still have our fundamentals done. So fundamentally, every web page should have one H1, that's one header that tells you what the title of the page is, and followed by a heading hierarchy. So our H2s should be nested under our H1 and then with H3s if applicable to that other major topic. This is really, really important to crawlers specifically more than users because you can use tags incorrectly but still style them in a way that users are fine. But by using that correct hierarchy for crawlers, they're understanding that relationship between each section. And ultimately, that will help you rank in different spaces, whether that's AI overviews or LLMs, wherever you want to be. This is fundamentally what we got to be focusing some time on. We also want to write compelling meta descriptions. I mean, this is a little bit arguable right now because there's so much changing on the SERP with meta descriptions and titles, and there's so much experimentation. And a lot of times, Google isn't even pulling meta descriptions that we give anymore, and they're pulling off page. But I still would recommend writing a unique meta description because you're still giving that crawler a bit more information. Although meta descriptions haven't been used as ranking factors, gosh, I don't know, 10 years maybe. It might be a bit, I might be over exaggerating a little bit, but it's still important. It's still contextual. It's still content. I would recommend still doing it. And then optimize images with alt text because crawlers, we love them, but they don't have eyes. So as much description as we can give, the better. So this is also important for social media. And I recommend if you're doing any short form videos on any platform to write descriptions because it helps users, helps crawlers, makes the world more beautiful. When we're choosing what pages we want to prioritize and work on for our audit or for our strategy, we obviously want to look at high traffic pages that have been declining. So if anything has seen a drop for any reason, whether it's seasonality or year-over-year performance. We can dive into why. Pages ranking with positions 11 to 20, we consider these low-hanging fruit, great opportunities to optimize and steal those rankings. Any page that's bringing you in your dough, add those as priorities. And then anything that has the potential to be a high conversion rate. So a good example here will be like if your client's a gym and you have some articles about how to deadlift. Can we optimize those to drive users to conversion pages on our site? How can we leverage that high traffic opportunity to turn them into conversions with us? Once again, some meme break for everybody. Thank you so much for joining my comedy sketch today. Detailed SEO extension. So I am all about using things that help me get tasks done quickly and learn what I can as quickly as possible so I can make those changes and bring in ROI. And one that I highly recommend from a Google Chrome browser extension option is called Meta SEO Inspector. This little guy is so cool. Every time you load a page, you click him up and he'll immediately give you any errors on that page, flag any content issues. And if you just run that, well, you don't even run it. You just click a button on any of those high priority pages that we just discussed on the previous slide. You'll have a great task list of what you need to tackle right away. Because, yeah, sorry, I did say that very quickly. Let me just open it up. It is called Meta, META, SEO Inspector. And it's a Google Chrome browser extension that I live and die by. So it will give you what you need to know on different pages. Obviously, if you're using any of the crawling tools like Screaming Frog, SEMrush, Ahrefs, you should get all this data too, but it's great to check out yourself. And looking at different content opportunities when we're looking at our reporting. So this again is just an example from Ahrefs, but you could use a Google Search Console. You can look at anything within a specific period of time, year over year, month over month, week over week, and identify if there's been any drops. And this will show us maybe our content isn't answering the intent of the keyword as it used to, and give us opportunities to update. It's really important that we continue to optimize it and update existing pages on our website instead of creating new content, because our authority lives on our URL. So I've discussed this in a couple of our previous chats, me and Corey. But if you're doing something like maybe every year I like to write a review of my favorite restaurants in Bristol. When I'm putting together that article or that blog, I want my URL to be something like Bristol Best Restaurants. I wouldn't want it to be Bristol Best Restaurants 2025, because the next year I would open up another page and that would be 2026, and so on and so forth. If you do already have a site architecture or site structure that has multiple pages targeting the same keyword over time, you can always just implement redirects and then consolidate on a new page. Redirects do pass a significant amount of authority, but never 100% of the authority. So that's something to consider. That's a quick thing you could take away and start to action today. Anyways, back to finding content opportunities. So we want to look at anything that's dropped, anything that's losing traffic, anything that's just a little bit old and outdated. We also want to look for content gaps and new opportunities. So this is just diving into competitor portfolios and seeing what they're saying and seeing if we could talk about it a little bit better. So if you see some newsworthy content, you can take that insight, take it to your site, but then please, please, please make sure that we're never plagiarizing and that we're always adding new value. So we want to take the existing content that we have, but also add a little extra something more, a little bit more EEAT, maybe a personal experience with whatever that topic is, so that you have a better right to rank. If you're just writing about something that's already in existence and you're giving it the same amount of effort, you're probably not going to show up in that same space. So we need to make sure that we're always punching above the others. And then, of course, just questions your audience is asking, even if there's not a lot of search data around it. Showing up before the search is there is even better, and answering things that your audience is actually going to engage with is so vital. I just saw somebody ask EAT. So EEAT is like one of Google's, I would even say like core principles at this point. It's anyways, it stands for experience, expertise, authority, and trust. So there are different ways that you show, in some ways, that you're not a bot, and other ways that you are somebody who knows what they're talking about and you have the right to be showing up in these spaces. So different ways we show EEAT are through personal stories, through author bios, through linking to awards and accreditations that we have, linking to our LinkedIn portfolios or Reddit's, Twitter's, Discord, wherever you're at, and just building that profile. Super important today. Duplicate content is one of the number one issues I run across in 2025 for SEO. It is mostly because back in the day, you used to be able to write lots of different blogs with similar keywords, and you could rank in different spaces because the SERPs were a little bit more unique. Those days are gone because Google's understanding that a lot of times people write different ways and want the same thing. So even if your pages aren't necessarily duplicate, like the same exact thing, if they're telling the same story thinly on two different pages and targeting the same primary keyword, they would be, to me, duplicate content. So there's lots of different ways we could deal with that, like redirecting them, consolidating, etc. But there's other ways that we can have duplicate content on our site too. So it's duplicate title tags, duplicate H1s, duplicate meta descriptions. Even if the pages are different, all these things can be flagged because they're not unique and they don't give that page the right to rank and the right to stand alone. So make sure we're merging thin pages. We're using canonicals if we do need to have two pages that are targeting the same thing. For example, if we have a page that's SEO domain names, but then we have one that we use just for PPC that's thinner content, but we didn't canonicalize it, then we're actually cannibalizing it. So we need to make sure we're using the right tools to get the right pages to show up. Ahrefs studied 2 million random keywords and found that the number of referring domains to a page correlates with rankings more than any other factor. That is a crazy, crazy thing to know because referring domains, if you don't know, are backlinks, but instead of backlinks, it's the number of websites or domains that link. So your backlink portfolio might be bloated because you have multiple links from the same domain. So this is saying if we look at it on a domain level, that's the number one influential factor to your right to rank. So yes, make sure that we're still doing backlink building activities, but really, really importantly, make sure that we're focusing on high quality backlinks and good domain authority. That brings us naturally to off-page SEO. So we can look at our own backlink portfolio in lots of different platforms. You could do it in, I just keep saying the same platforms over and over again, but Google Search Console and Ahrefs would be my two go-to options. And here you can dive into and filter different domain rankings, what text they're using to link to you. So that's anchor text, what your follow to no follow ratio is, and so on and so forth. There are sometimes issues with backlink portfolios, especially for sites that have been around for many, many years. You may have participated in some dodgy practices back in the day, like buying cheap backlinks or things like that. So you can disavow them. People don't necessarily or Google, I think, has even said that it's not necessarily that important anymore because they just deprioritize them themselves. But if you have a lot of spammy ones, it can't hurt. You do still have the option to do it, so maybe do it. But if we're doing a health check, an audit to build a strategy, what we'd want to do is lean into the opportunities. So looking at who's linking to our competitors and then maybe building a backlink outreach log so that we could reach out to and see if there's some opportunities for our site to show up there. This talks a bit more about link toxicity, which is what I was just saying. So those spammy links that may have been lingering for many, many years, you can flag them and disavow them with Google's disavow tool, and create this file and upload it. Make sure that you just use one file and you keep adding to it every time if you are going to do that. And you can export that using Ahrefs, SEMrush, et cetera, et cetera. The last section here is AI and search evolution. So everybody knows the way users search is changing and probably is always going to change, because as we get new technology and engage with new things, we're going to have to find out new ways to find what we're looking for. So whether that's Pinterest, TikTok, LLMs, at the end of the day, it's all still SEO, and we need to make sure that our content is visible and crawlable so people can find us. But leaning into AI overviews, so 99.2% of informational keywords trigger AI overviews. Informational keywords are those more top level ones. Like if I Google what is hosting, where users now get a little snippet that kind of summarizes what millions and millions of blogs talk about. Back in the day, people were actually ranking for that and people would click through. We're now seeing like huge drops in click-through rates for these more quick to solve queries, which is also why I emphasize EEAT, because people now are going to click through if they're looking for more in-depth, more detail, more expert knowledge. And those quick to answer questions are probably just going to be solved in the SERP and not result us with a click, let alone a purchase. So 8.6% of featured snippet clicks. That's the difference there. Optimization tactics to show up here, because we still want to show up even if users aren't clicking through and they see our site is solving a question. That is a huge amount of authority and trust served up right away, right in front of our users. So how do we get there? We need to make sure that our content is structured. We can use headings. We can use bulleted lists. We could use things in quotes, different ways to make it easy to chunk that content and serve it up in different places in the SERP. We can include data tables, key takeaways, and other things that just quickly snapshot whatever we're talking about so that it could be taken and put in front of the user. Oh, I lied. It's not over, guys. We also have a section about local SEO. So local SEO isn't applicable to everybody because some people don't need to build up their local listings. But if you do, make sure you have a Google business profile. One reason I say not everybody needs this is because a while ago, everybody did want a local listing, of course, but even if they didn't have a brick and mortar shop, which has led to a lot of people not being able to edit their listings because Google now requires you to like send a video of you in the location, walking outside, proving that you own the space, which has locked out a lot of my friends and colleagues and clients over the years of not being able to edit their listings. So don't make one if you don't need one. That's my little warning word to my friends. Huge thing to be consistent with across your website, your social media, everything is your name, address, and phone number. This is so, so important. Consistency in the right to rank is key. So make sure whatever we're saying it the same across all of our different platforms. Photos, we want to make sure that we're using recent photos, either of our products and services or whatever's going on in the office. Posts for engagement, Q&A sections, other things to fill up here. We also, more important than anything else, I think, is need to make sure that we have high quality reviews. So user feedback is becoming more important than ever for rankings everywhere. And this is not just limited to Google, but it's also things like Trustpilot or Yelp, or even what people are saying about you on Twitter and Reddit. Sentiment from users is being weighed heavily in your favor or disfavor. So encouraging people to give you good reviews, responding to reviews in a timely manner, engaging with your audience, all of these things can really, really help you rank in the Google listings section, but also in things like LLMs. Citations. So you want to make sure wherever you're being mentioned, okay, and cited, that we're auditing that as part of this process. So Google, Bing, and Apple Maps, Facebook and Yelp, anywhere else that's local listing, driving users to you. And then as previously mentioned, we need to be consistent with all of our business information. Local content and local schema can also be implemented on your site. So local landing pages, if you have services in specific areas. For example, if you do lofts in London, you'll probably want to do a landing page that's just focused on your lofts in London, but then you may want to do like lofts in Notting Hill, lofts in wherever your clients may be, so that you're building up those keywords in your portfolio and having different landing pages and experiences for those right users to engage with your site. Client testimonials from specific areas can help you rank there. And then here are just some examples of different schema you can implement onto your site to help you have the right schema data to show up in the SERP with an enhanced listing. So review aggregate markup is probably the number one I'd recommend if you have any reviews, because that gives you your stars on your SERP listing, which can really help with your click-through rate and to stand out against others, especially if competitors have that. And then you can also have things like opening hours, service area, etc. When we're looking at local competition, we want to look at what our competitors are doing, but we also want to look at what our friends, family, and local community are doing. So how can we build our network through links? And this is probably one of the easier spaces if you're starting link building activities, is community. Start with your community and then grow to the world. You can reach out to local sponsors, partners, local news, and build your backlink portfolio through there. Now we are going to talk about creating our actual audit. So I'm going to switch my screen really quickly. So here you can see the different sections broken out by, what we talked about today, areas that you want to spend some time. So this is our left-hand column. Then I gave a quick description of what each one is, so why we're looking at it. The analysis and finding and the grade is just phony. So please, when you're creating this, audit that part and make it fit to whatever you're finding on your client's site and your action needed to. So these are good examples and things that are probably applicable in a lot of audit reports, but yes, these are editable and need to be done. And then the useful tools. So when you're sending that to a client, you maybe want to remove column F, but this is for your assistance when you're doing this review, this audit. You have everything you need in one spot. So yeah, I've been using this sheet and sheets like this for many, many years, and that they are a good place to begin. And then you can take everything that you've learned and build your project timeline. So here's an example of what that looks like. So a foundation phase, anything that's super, super important, like sitemaps and quick errors on your site, and then optimization, and then building authority, and then our advanced phase. So that's just an example of what that can look like for you. But hopefully this gives you a good foundation to get started. Anybody has any questions?
Is there a way, I'm sorry, it's Justin. Is there a way to audit a site for AI overview mentions and links? Also visibility for chat, GPT, Claude, perplexity, etc.
Yeah. So there's lots of tools emerging in the market. The one that we use internally is at Ahrefs, just because we're long-lasting lovers of this platform. And the only thing I will say is at this point in time, it's so hard to track. We use it as a benchmarking tool to see how we're showing up against competitors. But golly, is it volatile of AI overviews? And especially with LLMs, is they're so tailored to each user that it's really, really hard to track. But from a benchmarking perspective, totally, there are things out there, and they often use ChatGPT without like a logged in user. So yes, use it with a lot of salt and make your own educated guesses off of those findings.
Yes. And hey, Nicole, I saw a comment in the chat here. Nicole said, this is being recorded to be posted to our hosting.com YouTube channel shortly after and emailed to you with the email you signed up for this webinar for, including the slides and the links mentioned. Okay, here's one I think you might like, because I know we've been working on some of this internally. In the context of rebranding requiring a domain change, is it possible to split a website traffic authority to multiple more specialized websites? cars and bikes, bikes in Germany, cars in Germany. The new specialized sites are to be sold in different businesses. Are there any strong arguments against doing that? I don't know if that for sure is a one-on-one to some of our Spanish speaking and different languages we're doing at hosting.com.
Yeah, I mean, this is a great question about splitting and building unique authority or building, authority all in one place. I will say well, looking at your example, sorry. So you're talking about breaking out into different locations. From a business perspective, of course, there are going to be different influences, but from an SEO perspective, we actually find that we rank better when we house everything all together. So you will perform most likely better if you have all of your authority housed in one space. This is because your keyword portfolio and your traffic and your click through rates and all of these different metrics all go and get built on that domain name and those URLs. So when you're splitting them out, you're actually creating different entities that can compete with each other. Now, if you're going to have local leaders in different markets, there could be a case there, especially if you want to sell these businesses or I don't know what your future plans are. But from an SEO solely perspective, you want to house as much authority as you can on a single domain.
Interesting. I didn't know that update. Okay. Justin says in Search Console, and I know this is one straight for you, I'm seeing impressions going well, but not seeing a corresponding increase in clicks.
Yeah,
What
great.
do you
And
think about that?
yeah, well, the number one thing in my experience when this happens is when there's paid activity going towards those keywords. So impressions are rising because you're likely already ranking in those top 3 spaces, but if you have a sponsored listing up here, people are going to click what you're paying for instead of the listings you have down there. So maybe look into that if there's any paid activity going on. If there's not, you maybe want to play around with some meta description testing and see what you can do to drive those users who maybe are clicking the listing just above you instead of you. So that could be meta description testing, different calls to actions. You could try different things in the title, different USPs, or try schema data to make your listing more rich. So that's like the aggregated rating I was talking about that can give you your pretty little stars below your site links.
You said this before though, Daphne, and I can't remember verbatim, but I wanted you to, so, the impressions is one thing, that's brand awareness, but you've said something in the past on that. Could you say, you know, the click-throughs are the key, right? But there's
Yeah, yeah.
value in the
Oh,
impressions.
totally. Well, yeah, also another huge thing right now with AI overviews is people aren't clicking as much as they used to, and that's just, probably how the internet is gonna shift for more of those top level non-transactional keywords. So even if your impressions are growing, that's still a good thing. It means you're showing up in the right places, and you just need to decide what KPIs matter most to you, but impressions are still a very, very good sign.
We want to show up everywhere for sure. And that lends to like the work we do here at hosting.com, everyone, is a lot of this is brand awareness. So we want hosting.com, so it's on this side of my, hosting.com everywhere showing up so that when someone thinks of new domain, new website, they come here. Okay, Shanta asked, knowing that there are all these things that need to be checked, either as part of initial audit or maintaining an ongoing site, what are some of the best tools to centralize, test, monitor, to do SEO, including AI searches?
Yeah. So again, I mean, golly, I'm giving some free plugging today, but Ahrefs is kind of an all-in-one platform. So if you use the site audit feature, it can run regular reports. So all of our websites get audited every month. I get emails with what changes happen, and this allows me to then not have to put the mental load of prioritization because it gets broken up into those errors, warnings, and notices. I mean, again, there are thousands of platforms out there that do the same exact thing. That's just what I happen to personally use.
Awesome. We've gone over. Do you have a minute or two,
I got
Daphne?
some time. Yes, I
Okay.
do.
Everybody, you in? And by the way, if you have to leave, please go and say thank you to Daphne and hosting.com, giving her time and me to share all of this awesome expertise with you to benefit you, our customer community. So be sure and say thanks to Daphne for this time, and also say, come back, please, now. And if there's a topic you're interested, she's got a lot of information in this. I know why you want the slides. See how the heart's coming up? But if there's one specific you're like, hey, and I think it was Justin earlier mentioned PPC. I already pinged our internal team. We've got an expert internal, and we'll start figuring out when we can schedule that. So do that with Daphne's work as well. Okay, Nick says, I took over a website which was infected with redirectors to prescription style pages. We dumped the site and the server, but a web search of our domain returns over 400 pages of the domain plus all the junk. So I have all these blocked by robot.txt so we don't get 404. Do you have a better suggestion?
Oh my. Okay. So I took over. I'm gonna have to give this one another read really quickly. You dumped the site and the server, but a web search of our domain returns those junk pages to you. Whew. Maybe you got to email me about this one so I can take a look at it myself because if they're blocked by robots, but these pages still exist on your domain, we probably need to look at redirect options at a server level so that they're not listing or not ranking. And if they're ranking on your domain and they're junk pages how did they get there? I mean, I got a few questions for you. But feel free to drop me a message on LinkedIn and I will look into this for you.
I just put her link in the chat there. She just offered, so go and do that. Be sure and connect. Justin, that's a good one I'm curious about too. A lot of websites ask you to, tick the Cloudflare box basically, right? Does that affect, when you're trying to get to the site, verifying human, all that stuff, does that affect SEO in any way?
It definitely depends how the site is set up. So the Cloudflare pop-up shouldn't, but if you have other pop-ups that are being rendered before users or crawlers get to the actual content of your site, this can be affecting your SEO. So an example I have is I had a client that did camper vans for hire, and they really wanted to have a pop-up that explained their sale as soon as the user hopped on the page, but then that pop-up blocked everything, all that rich content behind it, and we dropped a lot of rankings. They're like, "Why are we dropping rankings?" I'm like, "We gotta at least test removing the pop-up because it's rendering and people need to click." And to be fair, this was a while ago, and Google is probably much smarter these days and can navigate its way around pages better, but sometimes it can't, and we just wanna make things really easy and make sure our HTML is not being blocked by pop-ups or Cloudflare. Well, Cloudflare again should be fine, but yeah. Anyways.
Okay. Okay, let me get to one more. There's so many questions in here. They're awesome. As you can tell by the background at Daphne's house, it is now nighttime in London. And let's see here. Let me pick one last question.
Oh, I do see this. An anonymous attendee did say, "Can you speak about the challenge of going from A2 hosting to hosting.com?" And I will say there is a webinar coming out about this that I'm really excited to dive into our strategy and actions and how we did it and what results we got. So watch this space. I think we maybe actually have a date and stuff set up, Corey. Is that?
I was just trying to find it while you were talking and wasn't fast enough. Yeah, that was a case study. So took a huge website and migrated it with above and beyond. I don't see it immediately, but if you're registered for this webinar, which you are, you're going to get an email afterwards with the slides, the document, and then upcoming stuff too. So be sure you're there. And I'm going to give a link to make sure you're signed up for that here. Here's the landing page. Go there and be sure you're signed up. And once we get that scheduled, it may already be scheduled. We'll send it out to you all. Okay. I think
We'll have to do a Q&A section separately another time because we could go all night, I think.
we can. And Daphne's been talking for well over an hour now. Thank you all for being here today. Be sure you share, connect with Daphne on LinkedIn. And if you loved what you heard today, which I hope you did, share that out and mention hosting.com, please. We do this for our agency partners, our agency success community, what it's called, to bring our in-house experts like Daphne to you to help you. So Daphne, thank you so much for another awesome webinar. We hope you have a great night and get some rest.
Thank you so much, Corey, and thank you everybody for showing up today. It's such a pleasure to spend my evenings with you and get to share my passion with you all.
All right. See you all. Thank you.